Welcome to the Pottertron Network.
Just Keep Living to me now means I get it. And one of the things about Just Keep Living is that I wanted to have a place where people would feel safe. It really isn't enough to be right. You have to be effective. And you'll learn that the more breaths that you take, the more grace that you're given, the more opportunities that you have to just keep living. Just Keep Living with Marva Hanks. I'm so excited today to have two of my Pottertron Network family here with me, Antonio and Shalee. Yay! Come on.
Hello, thank you for having us.
It's already been a great party, and I just needed to weave our family and our listeners in so that they could join in and take notes. So I do want to get to how the traditional questions that I ask us.
Right.
How did you meet? Where you are on your journey? But what we were talking about live and in real time was how to show compassion and love and grace and mercy to those that are an offender in a relationship. And so we're just going to catch our listeners up. We were talking about the impact of a Joyce Myers, who was a victim of sexual abuse in her own home, and what her comments were about her mother being a weak-minded woman. But by the grace of God, we don't know what we would do if those situations had lined up. But Antonio, you were talking about Shalee introducing Joyce Myers into your home.
Absolutely. You know, my take on Joyce Myers, I think, was very commercial. That's why I was introduced to Joyce, was just very commercialized. And I was so wrong. And when Shalee invited her into our home via YouTube, I did not understand how real that in connecting this woman really was. And the one thing I wanted to bring up, and you're the host, you're the leader, and I respect you. And I'm going to let you just take the wheel. But I just wanted to say, she used the word entitled. And as Christ followers, how quick we are to say, man, you won't believe what this other person did in their marriage, or this other person did. And we don't look at ourselves. We look at ourselves as we're entitled. Oh, I would never do that. And that is like the wrong direction to look at people's lives.
Right. So I would say my husband may have had the same take that you had, but I know in a crucial part of our marriage, and we talk about it publicly to bring about healing in other people's lives, but we found ourselves in, and I know that Shalee found herself in the same line that I was. No one wants to be in the line of betrayal in your relationship. And then knowing that we are Christ followers. I love that you said that. So as a Christ follower, I thought, Lord, I'm surely in the wrong line, because I know that this don't feel like love to me.
No.
But I hear you telling me to stay. And so, Father, I'm going to be obedient to what you have told me to do. I've never seen this walked out, to stay in a situation where there's clear betrayal in the marriage and in the relationship. And by this time, we have been in it for 19 years. But I have been praying for, Lord, I want a great marriage. I know this doesn't feel good. This doesn't feel great. And saying that verbally and journaling that, the Lord used Joyce in our journey of reconciliation. My husband rededicated his life at a Joyce Myers gathering.
Oh, that's amazing.
You could have thrown me like with everybody that we have had access to, mighty men of God, famous in public arenas, but he was willing to submit. And we went to this Joyce Myers convention in New Jersey, and my husband rededicated his life to the Lord in the middle of that journey. So I praise God for.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say that, my wife, when I had betrayed in our marriage, it's interesting, because I think anytime that we make a mistake that affects our spouse, we don't want to bring it up, because then there's shame attached to it. And I was physically tied to the bed in the ICU unit. So
let's take us there.
Yeah.
Let's take us there.
And
so you guys have met when I met you years ago at the impetus of Pottertron Network gathering. You two weren't married.
No.
Nope.
But you were Christ followers. Because I remember having the conversation with you, and I'm like, well, why ain't y'all just, okay, Lord, do that thing. And so from there, about 4 or 5 years ago until now, So take us to the accident. I guess that's where we're going to go.
Right. In the accident, where do you start? I think, where do we start?
Oh gosh, we could start so many places with that one.
Where are you in your career? Let me tighten up the timeline. Where are you in your career and leading up to the accident? So it's going to be in the bio for our listening audience of the background of Antonio and who he is and how he makes his living and his connection with MMA, the arena. But where you are in your career and leading up to the accident.
So in my career, I am working 60 hours a week, 12-hour shifts at my full-time job for Danone, working as a processor. I make the delicious silk almond coconut milk, the creamers, the flavored creamers. And so I'm when I'm home, I'm not home. I'm still trying to shut down from working 12-hour shifts, 60 hours a week. My wife's a flight attendant, and we are passing by. And in the 3 hours that I can be a husband, it's taking a shower, cooking, trying to catch up with my wife, and then it's to bed, and then it's to the gym at 4 a.m. And on the side of that, I'm, for the fun job, I'm working as an announcer, boxing, MMA, tattoo conventions. So if I'm not on the microphone, then I'm at my job for 12 hours. And in that, I try to look for ways of having enjoyment in life. And part of that is riding motorcycles. I love to motorcycle.
We've been there.
It's a de-stressor. My wife had a Harley. I've had my Harley, and I bought a sport bike that my wife was like, don't buy that sport bike.
Totally against it.
And
it wasn't a Harley?
No, it was a sport bike.
It was a V-Rod? We had a V-Rod.
Oh, okay. This was a
Repsol.
Honda 1000 Repsol 1000, and it was beautiful.
Okay.
Yeah.
And she was like, I have a bad feeling about buying this bike. And I thought it was resentment for me buying the bike. And,
we hadn't learned that our wife is for us.
Yeah.
She ain't against us. Oh.
It didn't feel right. It didn't make sense. But, I'm a firm believer, too, is that he works so hard that, he's entitled to do what he wants with his money that he makes. I mean, granted, it is ours. But if you work as hard as he does, there's nothing wrong with spending your hard-earned money on things that you enjoy. However, with that being said, there were so many other things that needed to be taken care of first. It didn't make sense. And on top of that feeling that I had, it does not feel right. Please do not do this. Right. I was in training for Southwest as a flight attendant, and he was supposed to buy this bike in October. And I'm in training in September, and he's like, I think I'm going to go ahead and buy this bike. Well, I'm away for 4 weeks, so I couldn't physically be there to say, no, we're not doing this. So he went ahead and bought the bike, and I was just like, okay.
Potiphar's wife tried to warn him, don't kill Jesus. I'm just saying.
Yes. It's crazy.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
It's amazing on where wisdom comes out of chaos.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like a bad situation has to happen for you to have wisdom.
Does it? That's the kind of learner you are?
Well, it kind of happened by default.
Okay.
It happened by default.
So you went and got the bike.
And it's interesting.
Outside of your wife's wisdom.
Exactly. But when I brought it home, she had this disdain look. And I'm like, babe, look, it's clean. Listen to how it sounds. And she has this disdain look of.
I couldn't even look at it. I wouldn't look at it.
Yeah.
Right.
But it's interesting. A lot of us as husbands don't understand that God provides a wife for you to speak through her in areas that we are failing, in areas that we're missing the mark. And so.
Help meet. It means like Holy Spirit. That's the role we play.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. As comforter, as helper. So I'm glad you got to that realization, but you needed to learn the hard way.
I did.
So the hard way for you was you got the bike.
I crashed.
You crashed. You crashed on the bike.
A
great consequence. Talk about the crash. Where were you? What led up to it?
And I just want to take a step back to what you just said, a helpmate. A helpmate, God will speak to us as men and we'll ignore it, but God will speak through our wives. Because there's my wife, and we've been together since 2018. Well, right? Official?
Official, yeah, 2018. But we've known each other since 2005. We go way back.
Yeah, we go way. But as a helpmate,
Yeah, 2018.
you know, it's interesting how wisdom comes, because it's like the holes in my judgment, the holes in my life, the holes in direction. God uses her to fill those holes. To, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting because when I got insurance on the bike, the lady said, well, if you put your wife on there, it'll be a discount. I go, why is that? She goes, because women live longer than men because men make really bad decisions. I said,
For sure.
Okay.
Right.
So I was trapped. My buddy and I were in Dallas. It was a regular Friday night. He has a Ducati. We met up to get a bite to eat. And in that moment, I'm texting every time I'm on my bike and I'm getting ready to leave or I made it somewhere, I'll text my wife and I'll say, hey, babe, I made it. Or, hey, babe, I'm getting ready to leave. And in that moment, I said, do you want me to come home? Because I mean, I did, she allowed me to do what I wanted to do, which was go ride the bike with my buddy for a minute. And she said, no, go ahead and ride for a little bit and then come on home. So I didn't know this until I met up with my buddy again, that I convinced him to ride to Dallas to get some pictures of the murals. He just wanted to ride home. And I was like, wow, really?
Mm-hmm.
So we rode to Dallas, took some pictures on the bike, on the murals, and we navigated down a highway that I'd never take in the evening.
Which is
67
okay. Yeah.
to 20.
Familiar.
35 had some new construction. It was beautiful. It was smooth, nice sweeping curbs. And we were in and out of traffic, safely in and out of traffic. And then we came up to 67 and I'm in front of him. And when you're on a sport bike, 80 to 90 is cruising.
Very free.
Because you have to go faster or slower than traffic. You never want to keep up with that's where accidents happen. And so I had my hand on my hip, hand on the throttle, cruising. To my left was the fast lane. I was to the right of it. There was literally no cars in front of me, completely open highway in front of me.
Helmet
on, gloves.
Thank you, Lord. Leathers.
No, I was actually that week I was looking to buy a leather jacket. Those things are expensive, $700. And I was like, I'm not ready to spend $700 right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's January. So I was like, I'm not going to ride very much. And then I'm looking in my mirrors at all times. I see a C8 Corvette come up to me slowly and they're keeping up with me. And if you've ever been in your car and a car is hovering next to you, you have options because it doesn't feel comfortable.
No. When you ride a bike, you become a better driver behind the wheel because you know not to encroach upon that bike.
Mm-hmm.
Give them plenty of bandwidth, though.
Yeah, but we were driving to an appointment and she was in my Mustang. And remember that Camaro that pulled up next to you?
The bike.
The Camaro and the bike.
And
remember
the bike.
how did you feel when those cars came up?
Well, it made me absolutely nervous, especially the bike. He had pulled up beside me and he's wanting to race the Mustang. And I'm like, I'm not doing this. And so I would speed up and then he would speed up a little bit and I would just completely back off. I'm like, go.
Right. Do you think that's what was happening that night with the Corvette?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I always get people that want to race. This did not feel like that because he wasn't hitting the gas and lunging. There was he was just there.
Mm-hmm.
Something didn't feel right about that situation. So open highway, hit the throttle. I get out of the situation. You know, I'm doing 120.
Mm-hmm. Easy.
I'm gone. 2 cars come on the highway. There's 2 lanes to my right. For whatever the reason, the car pulled up in front of me and it's probably 30 yards in front. Plenty of room is what I'm thinking to brake safely. This is one of those situations I've been riding for years and I've always cheated death. Always. You know, in your sport, whether sport you and your husband have played professionally, you have good court vision, I'd imagine. You can see things develop and you always can see a way out, right? Nothing made sense. So as I'm approaching the car and I'm braking, I'm a little conservative because I don't want to flip the bike. There's a car to the far right, so that option is out. My only way out is to go to the left. Just as I'm about to navigate to the left, the Corvette comes back up, slows down, and boxes me in. Now that car should be gone.
Yeah.
I'm going the speed limit right now. The car in front of me, I'm approaching it quicker than I expect. And I'm like, wait, this doesn't make sense. And I remember thinking that.
It's split second thinking.
Yeah.
Right. Calculations.
So the car, in my opinion, in front of me should already be going at speed on the highway.
Mm-hmm.
It's coasting. They're not accelerating. The car to my left boxes me in. They should be gone. So, okay, something needs to happen. So I try to split the lane. I see in my peripheral vision the Corvette headlights. I feel my body hit the car to the right. Lights are out. I remember waking up, somebody shaking me on the ground. I'm struggling to breathe. I can breathe, but I'm struggling. There's a lady standing above me on her cell phone crying.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't know what she is seeing,
right?
But it's pretty bad.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lady holding me. LaVon comes up. Tony, I got your phone. We got to call Shalee. And so my glove is off. So I put my thumb on my phone, and I remember him saying, as he's walking away, Shalee, this is bad. You got to get out here. Mm-hmm. And then he walks away. Mm-hmm. And then I keep asking the ladies in front of me and around me, am I going to lose my foot? Now I can't feel it. I can't see it. And I'm not hurting. And they're just like, just be calm, be calm. And then I hear a guy walk up. I was in the Army for 4 years. I need to put a tourniquet on your leg. Okay. I feel it tight around my thigh, but again, I can't feel my leg below it. I feel the tourniquet on, and then he just walks off. In that moment, the more I think about it, I'm kind of like, this is not happening. There's no way this is happening. There's no way I'm on my back. I don't know where my bike is. There's no way this can be happening. And it's a little embarrassing, is what I'm thinking. Ambulance shows up, hey, and it's a rush. Everything is boom, boom, boom. They put me on the backboard, they strap me to it, and then at this point, I didn't realize all my ribs are broken. That's why I'm struggling to breathe. I'm having damage to my right lung. And then once they strap me on, I remember how hard the backboard was. And I'm really having a hard time struggling to breathe. And I'm telling the firefighters, I can't breathe. And I'm gasping. And he goes, hey man, this might hurt. I got to put something on your foot. Okay. Again, thank God. And yes, there's an accident. But in the moment, and if you're a believer or not, God is real. And he's very real to me and my family and my wife. One, I'm alive. Two, a stranger put a tourniquet on me to buy me time because I'm bleeding out. Three, God, and you can look at it however you want. We talked about it earlier. People will read things and make their own assessment of what that means.
How could a good God allow this?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But we have a merciful, gracious God.
When I tell you,
do we not?
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by the merciful God, my leg below the knee, both bones were completely severed. The nerve was severed. My foot was hanging on later that I found out by a patch of skin. Here's where God's grace is. I didn't feel any pain. If the nerve had not been severed, I would have been in the worst excruciating pain probably known to man. But that's where his grace was. So I'm in the ambulance and I'm looking, and then all of a sudden, I don't know if you've ever been, she does jujitsu. So you've been in a situation where you're being choked and the walls start closing in.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And then it eventually fades to black before you tap. You know that feeling.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Have you ever been in the feeling where you've hit your head or been in a situation where the walls are?
No, sir. I avoid those situations.
It's not a fun feeling.
You mean in basketball that they don't get that aggressive?
I might have been giving those hits out. I have not been on the receiving end of going black. No, sir. Mm-mm.
And so that's what it was. The room was closing in. It got black, and then all of a sudden,
you don't holler out Jesus when that type of thing happens.
It was a lot going on.
Okay.
There was a lot going on.
I mean, for those people that think that they haven't accepted Christ, this is what I want to say real talk.
Okay, yes.
And they think that there's a moment that right before I go, I can call on his name and I can be in his presence. Mm-hmm. You said there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
Jesus was not on your mind.
I was thanking God to be alive.
You were thanking God to be alive, but you did not know
How bad I was.
how exactly.
I didn't know.
And what you don't know, that God is merciful. So I can be on the other end. You're alive to tell your story.
Absolutely.
My brother was killed going 120 miles an hour. And we look at it, my mom and myself, as God's grace and mercy that he was taken out instantly.
Right. Oh.
So when I get to see him on the other side of the veil of heaven, will say God was merciful in that I felt no pain, but he was instantaneously gone. Mm-hmm. So that good looking 6'9" brother, another story.
Right.
Seeing them laid out. But in that too, we say God is gracious and merciful.
Absolutely.
But you are telling me God is gracious and merciful on your account. And so you wake up in the hospital, you are counting the menu of things that you say God is gracious for because you did not feel the pain. Mm-hmm. But in the hospital, this is what I want to get to, relationship stuff. We started talking about with Joyce Myers. In the hospital, your beloved is there. An emergency has happened. Everybody has their view and their perspective of this accident. And so other stuff becomes real and exposed.
Oh. Yeah. And the funny thing, and I asked her, what was this journey like for you? And it was heartbreaking.
So let's let her talk.
Yeah.
What was it like for you? You done already told this man, don't get this bike.
Don't get this bike. Don't do it. Don't do it.
Pilot.
Right.
So when the accident happened, it was like any other Friday. He had worked really hard that day. He worked overtime, and he actually asked me, what time do you want me home so we can go out to dinner? And I said, you know what? Go enjoy your evening. It's yours, Come back home. We'll go to dinner then. So it's so weird because, like he said, he always sends me a message, hey, I just got here. Hey, I'm on my way home. And I wanted to show you this picture, which the viewers can't see. But he sends me this picture. And this is the last thing that I heard from him. And
in front of the mural.
In front of the mural.
Gorgeous.
Yeah.
Gorgeous shot of a mural.
Yeah.
Who's the artist on that? Let's shout out for the artist.
I don't know.
It's not Ponchavelli. So
no. So it's a huge picture of an eagle spreading his wings, and it's got his bike on one side and his friends on the other. And that's the last thing I heard from. Well, I get a call. It's about 9:30 at night, and I hear all this commotion. I pick up the phone, and just all this commotion's going on, and it almost sounded like he pocket dialed me.
Right.
So I was like,
all the extra voices.
I was like, what's going on? So I hung up. Yeah, I hung up, and I was like, okay, I'll see him in a few minutes. Well, something told me to call back. So I call his number, and he actually picks up the phone, and he said, babe, I've been hit. And I'm like, wait a minute. What do you mean you've been hit? And he goes, I've been hit. Next thing I know, one of the paramedics gets on the phone, and he says, we don't have time to talk. He goes, I've got to get him to the hospital. I said, which hospital are you going to? He said Methodist, and hung up the phone, and that was it. How many Methodist hospitals are in Dallas Fort Worth?
Exactly.
And I tried to call him back, but no one answered. Mm-hmm. And at the moment, there was this real sense of calmness over me. I'm like, okay, how bad could it be? He got hit. I just got off the phone.
Just heard his voice saying,
I'm like, okay, it's probably like a little scratch. Let me just find out where he's at. So I immediately called my sister who lives in Phoenix, and I'm like, Ashriel, I said, apparently Tony's been in a motorcycle accident. I said, I don't know where he's at. I said, just be on standby. And then I call his friend Candy, and I was like, I really need help trying to find him. So Candy and I are on the phone for about 3 hours. And it's at this point that halfway through, I realize something's not right, because had he checked into the hospital, they would have his name, Antonio Perkins. Well, we couldn't find an Antonio Perkins. Finally, Candy had found out where he was, Dallas Methodist, and they had him checked under. It wasn't John Doe because he wasn't dead. It was John something is what they had to go by. And so I get a hold of the receptionist, and she goes, yes, we have someone here. And I think it could be your husband. She goes, get down here, and we're going to have, what is it? The chaplain waiting for him. Mm-hmm. And I was just like, oh my God. So I told Candy, I was like, you need to come get me. I was like, they're saying that the chaplain's going to be there waiting for me. I was like, I don't know what's going on. Mm-hmm. And from that moment, you realize how fragile life is, how instantly it can change. And everything, and even though him and I have gone through our issues, like every marriage couple does, everything went away. Nothing mattered. So I get to the hospital, the chaplain greets me and he's like, I'm going to take you back here. And my first thought is, I said, oh my God, I can't lose him. And I'm like, is he dead? And he goes, he's in surgery right now. There's nothing I can really tell you. But I'm here for support just in case. I'm not saying that anything bad has happened, but just in case you need support, I'm here for you. So they take me in the back and I'm calling everyone, letting everyone know what's happening. We get into the waiting room, the OR waiting room, and we're there for about 6 hours. And Candy comes up there. He's got some friends that come up there. His family members come up there. And it was the longest 6 hours of my life. And so many thoughts and emotions are just going through your head. And the only thing that you can think of is, God, just please let this man survive. And so finally, 6 hours later, the one of the surgeons comes out and she looks at me and she looks defeated. She just had that look of defeat on her face. And you ever see, like in the TV shows and the movies where the doctors walk out and you're just like, oh my God, he's dead. She looked at me and she goes, he's okay. And it's just that sign of relief. She goes, but I'm going to tell you, she goes, it was us against the devil for 4 hours. And she goes, we made sure to win that fight. And I didn't understand what she meant by that until later on when I got a chance to speak to one of the doctors. And she said, he's going to look a little different to you when you walk in the ICU room. She goes, I wanted to let you know that we had to take half of his right leg. He broken all of his ribs. His left pelvic bone is broken. His liver had a level 4 laceration, which pretty much exploded. And he's got a ton of road rash. By the grace of God, thank you, he was not paralyzed. He had no damage done from the neck up, so he still looked like himself. But you walk in that room and there are just no words to describe what you see when you see your loved one laying on his deathbed, literally, and there's absolutely nothing that you can do. There's nothing that you can say. There's nothing that you can do to let him know that he's going to be okay, because he was on a ventilator. He was on a breathing machine and he may not have made it. We didn't know yet. And so,
and how many months ago was this?
6.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you have the picture?
6 months.
I've seen the pictures.
Yeah,
I think
6 months ago.
Walter JJ kept me up abreast.
Do you have the one when you, because I didn't see these pictures at first, but to get an understanding of what she saw walking in the room, do you have that one?
Yeah.
I've seen it. I know. But you look worse than a fight, being in the worst fight of your life.
Yeah. And so I went back home and I had to gather some things to go back up there. And fast forwarding, he was unconscious for about 6 days. He was still on the ventilator, the breathing machine for about 6 days. And once things kind of subsided a little bit, I was like, okay, I need to start taking care of business. You know, the bills still have to be paid. Life still happens. The world doesn't stop because something happened to you. And so I'm like, okay.
That's real talk. That's work.
So I'm like, okay, I've got my husband over here. I need to take care of business over here. I just started a new job with Southwest. You know, how am I going to deal with all of this at one time? And at that moment, I mean, you just, so many things are going on in your head and in your life. The only person that you can turn to is God. You know, who else am I going to turn to?
Right.
Who else is going to understand what I'm going through?
Right.
Only God. But back to when I had to get his phone. I had to get his phone because he takes care of the mortgage and, you know, certain things he takes care of that I didn't have access to. So I was like, all right, I need to go through his phone. I need to get all the passcodes, yada, yada, yada. And then people started reaching out. I had his phone, so Facebook and Instagram's going off. And so I'm going through his phone and I'm going back. And I started seeing some messages I wasn't really fond of.
Okay.
And as a woman, you know, especially me, I'm a little detective. You give me 5 minutes on any subject or anyone, I can figure out their entire life. I'm an investigator. Okay. So I started reading a couple of messages and I'm like, well, this doesn't look right.
This don't look holy.
Yeah, this doesn't look right. This doesn't sound right. So I started going back And when I started going back, Miss Marvin, let me tell you, I was going back to 2018 Google searches.
Father.
So I found some things in his phone
The
that
big reveal.
showcased that he was being unfaithful.
Mm-hmm.
And my heart was shattered into a million pieces because him and I, we had such a great relationship. We had such a great friendship at first.
Right.
So here I am looking at my husband who's on his deathbed,
And had you have found these before he was on his deathbed, you may have put him on his deathbed?
No, not at all.
Oh, you're not that kind of woman?
I'm not that. No, I don't have time.
I am that kind of woman.
I don't have time for it. I'm packing my bags. I'm out.
Lord, you said till death do us part. This look like this may be the time.
Enjoy your coffee.
You know what? He can have it. I don't have time for that.
So your response was, you get the reveal that
I get
the man that you
reveal.
love, a covenant partner, is being unfaithful.
Yeah. And in that very moment, I became extremely angry with God.
Angry with God and not Antonio?
I became angry with God.
Make it make sense.
Because I felt like my entire world just got shattered.
Okay.
Everything that I have ever known was falling apart. My marriage, my relationships. I didn't know if this new job that I had just started was going to let me go. Nothing was making sense. And it kind of went back to what you were saying earlier. You know, God is supposed to be a merciful God, a good God. You know, if we believe in God,
and you love me, how am I in this line?
Why?
This don't feel like love?
No, not at all. Why are these things happening? You know, especially all at once. I'm like, this doesn't make any sense to me. And I am cursing God for one. And I was saying things to him that should have never come out of my mouth. And that was the first time in my life that I hated him. I hated him. And it was at that time, talk about how God works. This gentleman's walking past the door, one of the chaplains at the hospital. He knocks on the door and he goes, "Can I come in here?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure, come on in." And he goes, "Something told me to come to this room."
Come on, Holy Spirit.
And he goes, "Can I pray with you for a minute?" I said, "If that's what you got." I said, "Let's go." And so he started praying and I said, "Stop." I was like, "I can't hear this right now." I said, I can't take any more prayer. I can't take any more of anything. I just want to leave. And I just started crying and bawling and getting angry. And I said, "I don't understand why all of this is happening." And he looked at me and he goes, "So, you know, everything isn't supposed to happen for a reason." He goes, "Everything happens for a purpose. And that's what you need to look at. The purpose behind all of this, not the reasoning." And it's like, "I don't know what the purpose is." And he goes, "You're not going to know right away." He said, "That's for God to reveal to you when the time is right." He said, "Right now," he said, "you need to pray for your husband." He goes, "Your husband's laying on his deathbed." He goes,
You're not focused.
He said, "You need to pray for your husband right now. Everything else will come in time." And we started praying and, you know, still angry. It took me a while to get over it, but
no anger towards Antonio.
not yet.
Okay.
Not yet.
Okay. Because he was incapacitated.
No, I don't think the reality of what was happening really
reality hadn't caught up.
Nothing really caught up to me. I just know I was feeling all of these unfamiliar emotions.
Yeah.
And I didn't know how to process them. So it took.
Because you're pretty calm by nature.
Yeah. When I get mad or upset, I need to step away and I need to really focus on what's happening.
Okay.
Because I don't want my emotions to speak for me.
Okay.
That's not logic to
That's
me.
wise.
So I went home and I sat on it for a couple of days. And at this point, he's starting to come to. And it wasn't supposed to happen this way, right? The conversation of how I'm going to tell him I found all of these things out about him being unfaithful wasn't supposed to happen until he came home. Well, he's starting to come to in the ICU and he can't talk, right? So a couple days have gone by and he can only talk by writing, well, actually scribbling. And so I don't know how the conversation came about, but it just happened organically.
Okay.
And I started telling him about these things that I had found in his phone. And he had no choice but to listen to me.
He's strapped down.
He can't say nothing. He can't do anything.
Wow.
And the conversation just kind of happened. And you can just see the sense of relief that he had. Like, thank you. I am so glad this finally came out.
Yeah.
And it was a few days that had gone by after that where we were actually able to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
And during this time, I had realized that, and I think this kind of comes with maturity, and especially being in a marriage, at least from my perspective, is that I had to do some digging within myself. Okay, not saying that this is entirely his fault. I had something to do with it as a wife. And what I mean by that is, what did I not do as a wife that caused my husband to want to go look elsewhere for satisfaction?
To this, you about 6 months in. I got some decades on you. So the Lord will give you more epiphany and truth to that, honey. But keep going. This is your story.
Yeah. And so
you had nothing to do with what a grown man does and their choices.
I'm not saying that I did, but there were some things that I was not doing.
Oh, we're not perfect, but neither is he.
That I was not giving my husband the things that he was needing. And he would call me out on it, and I would turn a blind eye to it.
Gotcha.
Because of my pride.
Okay.
I'm not that kind of person, you know? And if you have a problem with something, we can work this out. Well, he was trying to work this out, but I was like, I wanted no part of it. I was stuck in my own world. I was too busy worried about Shalee. I wasn't too busy worried about my marriage and my husband. Because at this point in our relationship, he was working so much. I was doing my own thing. There wasn't an us. It was almost like we were roommates. And I hadn't recognized that. He had told me, but I had turned a blind eye to it. And so
what you're upon reflection, you're going through the menu of conversations in your mind. And then you're hearing, well, he was reaching out to tell me this. And I wasn't responding.
No.
So that happens in any marriage.
No.
That happens in any marriage.
Now, not saying what he did was right.
Please don't say that.
Because it doesn't. It doesn't.
And if we work in 60 hours a week and 12 hours a day, and we at home 3 hours, where do we have time for this to get started, sir?
Right.
Mr. Handsome?
Yeah.
You're listening to Just Keep Living with Marva Hanks. Where do we have time to start this?
You know, and
there's no condemnation, no judgment.
No.
I mean, the people want to know. Please help the church.
You know, it's interesting on how people talk about issues in their marriage, right? This happened or that happened.
They may or may not talk about it.
Right. But then people are stuck. They're not there for the reconciliation. They're not there for the talk and the healing. They're just stuck on, oh, well, this happened. And so we went through, and it was literally when she confronted me about it. I wouldn't even say confronted. When she asked me about it, I was strapped to the bed because I was pulling IVs and breathing tubes out. And, you know, they were like, look, dude, if you want to survive, we have to strap you. And I looked at her and she'd asked me about it. She was, hey, look, did this happen? You know, and I said, yes.
And the relief.
Oh.
The relief is the common thing that I hear from people that have gone through this, whether they're in reconciliation or whether it ends up in divorce. The relief of the betrayer, whether it's a man or a woman that gets exposed, the relief when you're found out.
Yeah.
Where does that, what is it? Why does that happen?
You know, because I think there's a relief or there's an anxiety. Because if you don't want to admit it,
how do you? Then
there's an anxiety. Oh, well, I have to live the lie. And I didn't want to at all. You know what I mean? So I was like, I would rather we have this conversation than live a lie. Because I didn't want that at all. I didn't want it was something that happened that I didn't stop from happening.
It's so common.
I didn't go looking for
Antonio, unfortunately, it's so common. I've heard it from my brothers and sisters both ways. How does it get started, and where do you think you can't stop? You can't say no.
Right. You know, I think it gets started because, you know, you're not, for my case, I wasn't looking to step outside of my marriage. I But I was looking for compassion. I was looking for a connection. I was looking for a touch, you know, things like that.
Right.
And I'm like, well, I'm not getting that here. She's not listening. Maybe I'm not saying the right things. Maybe I'm not doing the right things, because it's all cause and effect. It really is cause and effect. And we went through counseling before, we went premarital counseling, and somebody has to make the first move. You know, if I'm not getting what I want from my wife, it's probably because she's not getting what she needs from me.
Man, leader of the house.
So it's somebody needs to make. It's like playing chess. Somebody's
got to be the adult in the relationship.
Somebody needs to be the adult. And so even through all the talking, through all the this and the that, you know, something happened, and I didn't stop it from happening.
Right.
But at the same time, it didn't give me what I wanted.
So today,
you know, I didn't feel any better.
I've heard that over and over and over again, and it causes such collateral damage. The act causes such collateral damage. So this is what I say, there is no contained sin. There is no nice and tidy contained sin. I'm only going to do this and it's not going to impact. There is shrapnel everywhere.
Absolutely.
Impact. So what would you tell yourself today? What would you tell your younger self, your pre-2017 self?
You know, I would say you have an issue going on.
Mm-hmm.
You have an issue going on in your house. Mm-hmm. Looking outward is not going to solve it. It's just not going to solve it. You just need to take a step back. Mm-hmm. And if you're not getting through, if she's not hearing what you're saying,
right,
then you need to find out a better way to communicate. Right. Well, really, and then at the same time, whatever feelings you have, you need to check those. Because I think a lot of the times in my younger self, I just went with wherever my feeling was going.
Right.
I'm mad at my wife.
That's immature.
Then I'm going to go do this.
Strive to be a mature Christ follower.
You know, I'm not happy with my wife right now, so I'm going to go do this thing over here. And it's like, stop.
Right.
Just stop. Mm-hmm. And, you know, the thing was, I don't know how some people are, but I would get to work first thing in the morning and I would text her, hey, I made it to work. Mm-hmm. And I would get a single word and that would set me off. Like, okay, fine, good. One of those things. And it's like, I want to talk to her because I know something's wrong. And what's the matter? I'm good. Well, every married man knows if you get I'm fine, I'm good. Woo. She's not happy about something.
Loaded.
And
so until you learn the language of conflict resolution, you're left with that.
Right.
But then at the end of the day, everybody has to, make their own choices. So somewhere there is a choice to sin.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
And then how do you get comfortable with, I've asked other people this, my spouse included, how do you get comfortable with?
Rationalize it. You got to
help the church.
That's the only thing, because you rationalize what you're doing is helping me. Mm. It's helping me in some kind of ways. And it's very selfish. Everything that happens is an act of selfishness like that. Mm-hmm. And so when she was going through my phone, and I've always handed her my phone, like, babe, go through it, go whatever you want. There was a young lady that said, hey, let's go meet up for a beer. You know what I mean? And in that moment, what I wanted was just to sit down, talk with somebody, right?
So in your love language is words.
I guess it is. It's more yours.
We read the book, The Five Love Languages, and his is actually quality time. Mm-hmm. And what was the other one? It wasn't words of affirmation.
It was. I think it's turning into physical touch. I think it became that.
So his was more of like quality time. Right. Mine is words of affirmation, physical touch, what kind of goes hand in hand. And I think, we started off what I thought was really strong. We were going to premarital counseling. We were doing all of the steps necessary to make sure that we had a successful marriage. Right. And when we were going to premarital counseling, there were even times where he wanted to quit going because I would point things out that weren't making me happy that I thought, I knew were wrong. Social media being one of them. And it could be such a great tool, but it's so damaging to relationships because he loves, and I hate to say loves, now, but he loved women, and that is his weakness. He would, double click on those pictures and make comments, and you can't do that. When you take that step to say, I want to be in this relationship or I want to marry you, that old self has to go out the window. So I would point these things out in counseling, and he would take them as I was bashing him. Well, it's not that I'm bashing you. I don't think you're a bad person, but these things need to change. These old habits need to go away in order for us to have a successful marriage, and they weren't. So in turn, I felt like I wasn't being heard.
Both of you felt like
my physical touch, my words of affirmation, those things weren't being met. Quality time for him, he loves to sit and watch movies. I hate that. So I would sit on the couch with him and watch a movie, but yet I'm on my phone or reading a book. I'm not actually in tune with what's happening. And so he would view that as, well, she doesn't care.
Rejection.
Yeah. And so it was kind of like a two-way street, and we weren't communicating.
So now communication looks like what?
Everything's changed.
Everything.
The accident has rewired a lot of my thinking.
What you thought would kill you has
made me stronger. Well, the thing is, we look at this like the accident saved our marriage. Is the way, because there was things that had happened that I put a stop to. I said, this is not right. I can't continue. But just saying that wasn't enough. Wasn't enough. And I wasn't going to be forthcoming.
Put action behind your words.
Right. And I wasn't going to be forthcoming saying, hey, I did this. And it wasn't until the accident happened where I'm literally laying in the bed and she asked me and called me out on it. And I looked her in the eye and I said, yes. And she said, you know what? And she's crying and she's upset. And I'm just sitting there waiting. And she said, I was ready to go pack my bags and go home. But then she said, the next couple of days she came back, still with disdain, anger, frustration, betrayal. And she looks at me and she goes, you could have lied. You could have not been honest. And I respect you for being honest. She said, you're worth fighting for. If it's not with you, then it's with somebody else. And I don't want to start all over again.
Come on, wisdom.
And so our worship leader came to the church, to our hospital room. And that's when it all came out. Her emotional state of how pissed off she was. Right. And I'm sitting there and, anytime that we were having a conversation, and we never fought, we fought fair. We call it fighting fair. If we ever got in an argument at home, there was rules.
Rules of engagement.
Yeah, we don't curse. We don't raise our voices.
We don't put our hands on each other. Right. But in previous, if we weren't being heard, if I didn't feel, I'd get on my bike and just go, you know what? I need a break.
We would both shut down.
That was
the biggest issues is we would both shut down. And then when it came down to actually talking about how we felt, we weren't being true to our feelings. Right. We were kind of sugarcoating it. Right. But like he had mentioned, when we were talking and I was ready to pack my bags and leave, I've known him for so long and I know what kind of man he is, the kind of character that he has. And to me, he is worth fighting for. This marriage is worth fighting for. Because if I'm not going to do it with somebody, it's going to happen with somebody else. And who's to say it's not going to be 10 times worse? And he's only human. We're only human beings. We're going to make mistakes. I cannot expect him to be 100% perfect and vice versa. Right. We all have our flaws.
Was this the first marriage for you both?
No.
Okay. So there we go. There we go.
Yeah.
So wanting to get it right this time around, because that comes from wisdom from a deep well to say that you're worth fighting for. How did that make you feel?
Oh, amazing. It was interesting. It was because here's the thing. She gave me mercy and grace.
Come on, mercy.
And a lot of people don't know really in context what that looks like. I heard it from somebody who was a lot wiser than me to break it down. Here it is. And I could be getting it backwards, but mercy is getting what you don't deserve. Is mercy. You're getting what you don't deserve.
Because you're deserving of death. You was in that bed.
Right. Exactly. So you're getting, if we were in a court of law and you look at stepping outside your marriage as murder, okay, you're getting what you don't deserve, which is a pass. you're like, okay, then we're going to let you go. Whoa, I deserve this. But then you have grace is not getting what you deserve, not getting, which means you should be getting 30 years to life. You're not getting what you deserve. And that's her staying and her fighting and us working. And so being in this bed and her just unleashing her emotion and frustration and anger and the crying, I had to sit there and I had to listen. I couldn't turn away. I couldn't leave the room. I couldn't. And so there was a very fixing moment to something that was broken. And as weeks and days went by, I was in ICU for 3 weeks and then 2 weeks at the recovery rehabilitation. And that's a great 5-6 weeks that she was still angry.
Processing.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, it just when I thought, okay, there's a healing, she would look at me and I say, what's the matter? She was like, I look at you.
Oh, for sure. It's a daily decision to choose forgiveness.
Yeah. And she said, I'm still see you.
And he doesn't quite understand that. We've even talked about it because he said, if you forgive me, then you're not going to keep bringing this up. Once forgiven, let it go. And it's not that easy because when I look at him, it's not so much the act that I'm hurt by, it's the distrust, the dishonesty.
Trust has been broken.
Because I have put this man on such a pedestal since 2005, and we have come such a long way over the course of 16, 17 years. I just would have thought that had it gotten to that point beforehand, he stepped out of our marriage, he would have come to me and said, look, these are the things that I'm feeling. We really need to work on this, especially going to premarital counseling. That was the perfect opportunity to say, this is what I'm thinking, this is what I'm feeling. And he didn't do it. And so when I look at him now, yes, I have forgiven you and I'm moving forward with you. But at the same point in time, I still look at you and I'm like, God,
and it's real. It's real. So the bones in your body have healed from what I said. Your ribs have healed. But her soul has been wounded. Her soul has been wounded. And so there is no prescription on how long it takes for heal. But as a person that has been in that journey and on the other side, that so much so that you forget the details. So you will get there. But it's a daily choice. It's you reminding yourself, but you're also reminding the enemy that I specifically remember forgiving him. Yeah. And it's nothing but the Holy Spirit that will empower you to look at him with so much love that you can't even stand it.
Oh, absolutely.
And what I'm hearing I hear from you, Shalee, is that maybe at some point in your journey, you might have idolized Antonio. And so what I do know about the Father is that he is a jealous God. And so sometimes he needs to take away that thing to really test us to see, is it me that you want to pursue, or is it Antonio, or is it the dream? Because you both are, have been in marriages and relationships before. Have you idolized that marriage? And so he needed to destroy that thing, perhaps.
Yeah. And there was always this, as women, we fantasize, and I'm sure men do too, of this perfect marriage that we have with this one person that we always wanted to spend our life with. And when it's not what you thought it was going to be, it definitely does something to a person. Right. But this helps me lean more into God, more into my husband, more into myself, because there are things about myself I didn't know. I didn't understand.
I didn't know I had murder. I didn't know I was a murdering person until the right set of circumstances come up. Right?
I was always, and I have been from just the past, where if something didn't suit my needs, I was gone. I wasn't sticking around.
We're fleeing.
I
ain't working. I'm a bounce.
No, and I was always taught, if something or someone doesn't add value to your life, let it go. So the moment it stops adding value, let it go. Right.
But in a covenant relationship, now y'all are married, for sure, for real.
Oh, for sure.
So there's different terms of engagement.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, there is. And what's interesting is anytime that we were going through this season, right?
Yeah.
She was working at home for your sister's business. And as much as she loves her sister. I'll tell you right now, and there's memes on IG. You can look it up, scenarios where you come home and you're talking to your wife, or wife to the husband, or your spouse, and they're kind of just there. But as soon as the phone rings and it's their sister, oh girl, it's like this whole happiness, this joy. And there was times where I was like, well, how come I can't get that? How come I can't get that side of joy? And so we as men, we do have to check ourselves, because we may not like the response we get from our wife. But in that moment, I started using my diary, my tool, to say, okay, before I text her that I'm angry and go off, because once you say it, you can't get it back. So I would text to my diary my anger or frustration, like, look, this is what's going on. I would get that out. I would reread it, and then I would, okay.
This is what this sounds like. This is how this may be interpreted.
Whenever I went through his phone, I came across his journal. I even tell him I feel so bad for going through his journal, but at the same time, I'm glad that I did, because everything that he had journaled about, probably about 95% of it was about me. And they were very hurtful things to read about yourself. And you don't want to read, negative words or issues about yourself, because we don't see ourselves that way at times. But to read what these man's thoughts were about his fiance and now his wife were so it took my breath away.
Did it feel like a false accusation?
No,
Did you feel it was
It was a reality check for me.
Okay.
It was a reality check, because I even told him, I see the things that I'm doing. I just don't want to admit to it, because I was a very unhappy person in this season of my life.
So the Lord is like, both of y'all unhappy. Let's
yes,
destroy it.
absolutely.
I couldn't tell her that. So the way what I was thinking and feeling towards her, you can't say those things. You can, and I say you can't say that because.
Or how about there's a way to say it that doesn't cause destruction?
Perfectly put. Because, all of us know how we feel in a moment of anger or frustration. But if we take that and put it into words, they can cut like a knife. And our words are either to heal or to hurt.
Bring life.
And so I would much rather take it out of my journal, get that out. Then what I can say to her is refine, like, okay, I didn't like how we left on term. It's more refined versus,
right.
And it's truth, but you have to, it's not going to be helpful. If I tell her those things in that state of emotion that I'm in, it's not going to be helpful. It's only going to be hurtful.
Right. So how do you guys equip yourselves now with support moving forward after the accident? So how do we have supports in place to build up our marriage? I know you have a church family, but church family and.
I think it's just being very transparent with one another. Just that open line of communication, regardless of, how we think each other is going to feel about it. You have to be open and honest.
Do we have counseling or people that keep you accountable or?
Well, I think we do.
That are pro marriage.
No, we don't. If we're being honest, we have friends.
Let's be honest.
We have our church family, but we're not taking the steps that we were taking before. I think we've just kind of become complacent where we're at. And I don't know. For me, I don't see the need to kind of bring in outsiders into our marriage, because I want the main focus to just be us and really turn into the Word of God and how we're going to get through the seasons of our marriage.
There's something to be said about having a good coach and accountability partners, I will just say. So having been where you've been, it wasn't an accident that brought the great reveal. It really was the Lord to expose what was going on in our marriage. And so I would say I'll be praying for you all to find an accountability partner that will help coach you through. Because it sounds like, and I'm not an expert, let me preface that. It sounds like you were in premarital counseling and marriage counseling before, and you weren't utilizing it as the source that it could be, because you both were not telling the truth. You weren't telling the truth then. But so if you were in a situation where you had just people that have been through what you've been through and know how to coach you on being able to have loving conversations or redirect or put the mirror up in the most loving way. That's going to be helpful and rich.
Well, it's interesting. Like I tell people all the time, if if you don't change if life doesn't change the way you think, when you basically die, which pretty much was like, what, 3 or 4 times I died? Yeah. I kept crashing. Like my body kept failing in the 3 weeks of ICU. And I didn't realize I was about to be in cardiac arrest when I made it to the hospital. Like, I mean, there was maybe 30 minutes would have gone by. I would have been gone. I lost so much blood. But if you don't, like when you face death, like I did, and I say that, if it doesn't change you, something's really wrong with you. And so coming out of that situation, things that would bother me or irritate me or take me back don't.
Right.
And I'm talking about with you, with my wife, now little things it's like, it's all good. It's really, and so now the way I communicate with you is way different than before. The stresses at home, like I even say, babe, we need to have a place of peace when I come home. It needs to be a place, because it was turmoil at home.
Okay.
And a lot of it was working 60 hours. And I even told my bosses, which I had a conversation with them. They said, Tony, you were praying about that. Yeah. Because 60 hours a week does affect your marriage.
Of course.
Yeah. And we were just kind of going through the motions of life and the motions of marriage. And really, we weren't even though we were going to premarital counseling, we weren't doing the work. And he felt like every time we went, it was an attack against him. And I'm looking at myself like, I'm a perfect saint over here. I'm not doing anything wrong. And I think we tend to do that in marriages. We don't want to look within ourselves to figure out what we need to work on to better not only our marriages, but ourselves. And I'm still working on that. But this accident has really opened up a lot about who I am as a woman and who I want to be and who I never thought I was. Right. Over especially the first 4 months of him, being in ICU to go into rehabilitation and then coming home, I was his caretaker from sun up to sundown, just about. And before, like in my past marriage, I can't say that I would have done that. I probably would have been there, but not so much hands-on like I am now. And I never thought I was that kind of person. And it was so weird because people would ask, not me, but they would ask friends, is she going to stick around? Is she going to leave him? And
that's a real question.
And I'm like, wait a minute, why would you even ask that? And they would say, because women and men would do that. They would get in these situations and they would bail.
Right.
I could never imagine being that kind of person. And so even though I was angry at him, and I'm looking at this man going, okay, I'm angry with you. I realize that I'm angry with you. I had to put that aside because at the end of the day, he's my husband. And I made
But I have a question then. If they're asking that friends, I'm going to say they had a longer history. But what was the cause of your demise of your first marriage then? If it wasn't this?
It was...
And you can be respectful of the exes. But,
no, he doesn't quite understand this, but I'm friends with all of my exes. I never leave on bad terms with them.
All right.
That's interesting because I can't be friends with my exes.
I mean, different. She's a different kind of woman.
Yeah.
No, I'm
sorry. She moves in wisdom initially, and she's already has a great emotional self-control. So, but if infidelity wasn't the cause of breakups in the past, then for most people, for 80% of the population, infidelity, adultery is the deal breaker. And so you said you would stay, but what were the causes of a breakup of a marriage before?
It didn't feel like a marriage. It wasn't a marriage. Okay. It was two people who needed something.
Okay.
We benefited off of each other. He needed someone to help take care of his son, and I needed someone to kind of give me that push that I needed to be successful, so to speak. There was no communication. He was 10 years older than me, and he tried to control everything.
Okay.
He was very controlling. He was a narcissist, but that's just who he is. And I see that, but he just wasn't for me.
Okay.
It was one of those situations where, and I was a really bad alcoholic for the longest time. I've been 8 years sober now. And I will have to say that alcoholism was a huge contributing factor to failed relationships and marriages in the past.
Okay.
And so it didn't mix. I had to find out for myself. who I was. And by doing that, I meant putting down the bottle.
Okay.
So that was one of the.
So you're taking on this role of reconciliation with Antonia, where people would have expected you to bounce, and you're doing this fully sober minded, full of answered prayer from God.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that was one of the hardest parts, because during all of this, there were points where I wanted to go to that liquor store and pick up the bottle and just say,
no one would have blamed you.
Forget it, throwing down 8 years of sobriety, but it wouldn't have solved anything. It would have just made me feel worse.
Well, kudos to you for loving yourself more. And making a positive decision.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I have to be the better version of myself, not only for myself, but for him. And I have a 26-year-old son who is now, looking to me
watching.
He's watching, and he's coming to me for advice now. And I want to make him proud.
Right.
And I want to make myself proud.
Okay. What do you say, good brother?
We had that conversation. What I meant by it was when I said I cannot be friends with my exes, it isn't, I'm not allowed to be friends with my exes.
That is not true.
That's true.
Stop it.
Come on,
Stop
girl.
it.
Come on, girl. And here's when I tell you that God will use your wife to speak wisdom. When you say, babe, you cannot have exes coming to, XKO, or you cannot be friends with exes. I am a flirter. I'm a flirter, and I say I used to be a flirter. And so it's really awesome thinking now, post-accident, that stipulation that she puts on me is great wisdom. Because the person that I was before the accident, I did not use the best judgment when it came to the opposite sex. She would say, babe, it's great that you want to do this and go to lunch or have a lunch meeting, but here's the thing. You cannot go one-on-one. Oh, babe, but she's not going to do anything. Babe, she's like, I'm not worried about you. Other people have different motives, and it could be innocent. But when she's like, babe, it's not a great idea, to go there with an opposite sex. It's so. And
how did that make you feel when she was saying it? Was it that because clearly she was speaking from wisdom and insight then, and were you feeling like it was something she was trying to keep from you, or
it felt like she didn't trust me?
Okay.
That's what it felt. It took everything.
But at the time, so the truth was found out. She should have been trusting you.
Exactly.
Oh, okay. Oh.
Well, in those situations, there was, in my mind, there was going to be no harm. But anytime it came up, I don't trust you. And that's how I felt, as if I was untrustworthy. And then it got to the point where, okay, it segued from being mature and taking that as, wow, she really, God is really speaking to her heart about these things. And this is keeping me out of danger. I didn't see it as that. I saw it as, oh, well, this woman doesn't trust me. And then eventually it became me being vindictive. You know what I mean? And so for men, when your wife is saying, don't go to these places or don't do these things or think twice before you make an action, don't let your pride get in the way.
Right.
Let's just say, you know what, God, is she right?
Right.
God, are you speaking? And a lot of the times, our wives will help us to avoid destructive moments.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? It's not manipulation, but it's really keeping us from going down a bad road.
Right.
And
who is more for you than your wife?
Exactly. And so when I spoke to my uncle the other day, he was a caretaker for his wife. She died last year, and it was almost 8 years or 9 years of her body degenerating due to MS.
In sickness and in health.
And he was there through all of it. And I told him, I said, man, I'm glad to be married to Shalee. And in my mind, when I say her name, Shalee, it's like, it's this image of a person that I've always been friends with. It's the it person that you want to hang out with. And now I'm married to her. And I said, man, dude, before this, and this is just real. When I came home from the hospital, I had to use a pee can to urinate in because I could not physically get up to go use the restroom. I had, eventually I had a wheelchair, but it would just take too long to get, because I couldn't put any weight on my good leg because my pelvis had 3 fractures. And so I'd use this. And I said, dude, there will be times where she would come in, she would take the pee can and turn it and take it to the urinal, wash it out and bring it back. Never in my life would I ever think she would touch that and take care of me like that.
Love
Never.
looks like emptying out your pee can.
And it does. But guys, boyfriends to their girlfriends or husbands to their wives, when this happened and she asked me, hey, did you step out? And I said, yes. In that moment going forward, there was no negotiating. There was no, babe, will you take care of me? There was none of that. She sprung right into action.
Well,
she sprung into action to take care of our home, to take care of me, to make sure that bills were taken care of, to make sure that I had everything that I needed to have a steady recovery. I didn't have to ask her for anything. She, even in a pissed off state,
that's what love looked like.
Being hurt, she was there for me.
Right.
And I've spoken to a couple other husbands that were like, bro, when I had a foot surgery or my leg was dislocated, these guys would say, man, my wife just was there. The wives would tell, sit down. I've got this. And I don't think we even understand that they go into help mode in a moment's notice.
Right.
And it's really a blessing. It really was. And I got a chance to see that side of her. And we, to this day, can talk about the hurtful moments without being upset with each other. Yeah. We're recovered. But at the same time, and I've said this to you, remember when I was like, what's the matter? You were like, I'm looking at you and I'm feeling some kind of way. And I said, babe, I get that. I said, but the devil does not want us to have a successful marriage. Not to say that I can't own up for my mistakes, which I clearly do. And I said, the way we think affects the way we feel, the way we act. And I said, babe, that we're healing. And I said, be careful with that. I said, because thoughts can take us places that we don't need to go. And I have to be careful on what I say because I don't want to manipulate her.
Right.
Because I want to give her space and time to be angry at me. But I also have to make sure that doesn't take us somewhere.
I think what I know that I appreciate about my spouse finally supporting me in that way when he recognizes that I might be tempted to look at him not in the most loving way is he just prays for me. I can tell because there is no coaching me out of it unless you've experienced it. The best way when I'm doing speaking to women about it is that I felt like a razor had been sliced me open from my throat down to my private inner parts and I'm walking around flayed and exposed. And so that's what I say. It's like your bones have healed. You said your organs have healed, but there is nothing that compares to a wounded soul.
Right.
And so the amount of coaching, like it will be the Holy Spirit, because sometimes even if you're in that state and you recognize what it is, your best offense is going to be silent prayer and to keep loving and to keep approaching. Because the timetable that it takes to heal is so only the Holy Spirit can do it. And if she's constantly surrendering your will and your way, clearly she's surrendered her rights to be right, to leave.
Oh, yeah.
So we see her willingness, but it is the soul that's been scarred. Like you have visible scars that we can see. You can't see her physical scars.
Absolutely.
So wisdom would say, pray.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, I'm okay with it now. I don't walk around looking at him like I did even 3 months ago, going, oh God, I can't look at you, or I'm so angry with you. I have dealt with it. I have processed it. I still pray about it, but for me, I had to move on because I know me, and I will sit in that dark space and I will let it eat me alive day in and day out. And then my entire world shuts down. And when my entire world shuts down, I don't want to go to work. I don't want to eat. I don't want to do anything. I just want to just mope in that dark place and feel sorry for myself. I can't do that. Right. So I have to pick up the pieces for myself, say, okay, I forgive you, put it behind me and move on. Now, if it happens again, I know what the steps I'm going to take is, nice to know you. We tried to work it out, but I'm gone. I'm not going to do it again.
Well, the thing is too, is we want to fix things as men. We're always in fix and repair mode.
Yep.
And the thing is, when I was in that hospital and we had this discussion,
you were helpless.
It was helpless. And there was no, baby, don't leave. Baby, I'm sorry. It was just admit and then let her unload. I had to. I mean, there was no convincing me that, Tony, you can talk to her. You can do that. What are you talking about? There's no things that we can do to repair it other than let her have her space, let her have her moment, and be there to answer the questions. Whatever comes in, answer those questions. So even now, when she's like, well, I'm looking at you a certain way today. Okay. Then there's no, baby, I'm sorry. Let me get some flowers. Let me make you this. No, doing things doesn't work. And we've had this conversation with other friends that we've known.
Yeah.
Let her go through it. And if we joke about it, because when we were dating, we were in it. Well, we were big headed and we were shutting down each other, and I called her for lunch because I had done a big headed move where she came in from work, gave me the silent treatment, went to go work out. And I made it about me. I didn't know that she was just having a bad day, but I made it about me. And I said, well, I'm going to give it to her.
You were in your feelings.
So I made coffee that morning and I was out. I said, I'm going to do to you what you did to me. And I went to the gym, didn't say nothing to her.
And I'm always going to
and it was so funny.
Further, because like I mentioned, if it doesn't serve value to me, then I'm leaving. I'm not going to stick around for it. I don't have to. I have options.
So you made an inner vow that that's how you were going to operate.
I think I've always been that way too. I was raised by my dad, who was very hard-headed. And so just when you're raised by a hardcore Italian man, there is no room for error in our world. And so he had gone to the gym and I was like, this dude right here, because I was supposed to go with him and he left me behind. He left me behind.
Such nice and kind words.
So he calls me up a few hours later. He comes home and he knows my personality. I don't do this anymore. But like I said, I have to go away for a little bit to process my feelings. I don't want to act out of emotion. And so he comes home and I wasn't there. So he's like, okay, she wouldn't take a ride or she went somewhere or whatever. And he calls me up a few hours later and he's like, hey, you want to come, you want to go do lunch? I'm like, yeah, if you want to come out to the beach. And he's like, the beach? I'm a flight attendant. So I literally, within 3 hours, I packed a bag.
Wow.
I went to the airport. I hopped on a plane and my dad lives on Pensacola Beach. And I went and sat on Pensacola Beach. I was like, I don't need this. Wow. And he was like, what are you doing? You can't do that. Even my dad told me, he's like, what are you doing here? And I was like, well, I didn't like the way he treated me. So I'm gone. He's like, get your butt back out.
I wasn't even mad. So again, mind you, this is 8 a.m. timeline, y'all. 8 a.m, I get up, make coffee, and I go to the gym. And I don't say I'm going to the gym. I just leave. But I make coffee and give her coffee, and I'm like, all right. And I go to the gym.
Yeah.
And then I run a few errands and this and that. And then I call her like, hey, and I haven't been home yet. So I'm like, hey, you want to go do lunch? She's like, well, I'm on the beach in Florida. I go, what in the what? But I wasn't mad. I said, well, that's just you being you. I wasn't even mad. And it's interesting because I knew who I was dating. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like I wasn't mad. I just said, this is how she handles it. Right. This is what she does. Right. Her dad said, you cannot just leave because you're mad at him for not going to the gym with you or him, whatever it was.
Right.
And so through our relationship, there were things that I knew that were about her personality that I just said, accept it for what it is. Mm-hmm. But the closer that we've become in our marriage as husband and wife, the books, this and that, it just left less room for error. Mm. And when I didn't get what I wanted, or I thought that I wanted, well, then I'm going to shut down too. And that was never, anybody listen, that's never a good way to approach things. Right. It's just as worse as putting hands on somebody. Because when you shut down emotionally, right, then you shut down lines of communication.
Mm-hmm. Shut off intimacy.
But this accident, I've never known anybody to literally had their vows interrupted, but they still step up. Mm-hmm. And I was like, wow, amazing, amazing. And I come home, this is after we've worked through our differences. I've come home from the hospital. This woman just blew me away. I'm sitting on the couch. I'm in a great deal of pain. She drinks a Red Bull and a coffee for breakfast, doesn't eat the whole entire day. We've got contractors in her house. She's redoing the house. She's going to Home Depot. She hasn't eaten all day, and it's 8:00 at night. And I think we ordered pizza, and that was the first time that she ate. In between that almost 10 hours of a day, she's blowing and going to the store, getting things to the contractors, doing this. And I'm sitting back, and it was the first time that I got a chance to see her in action, taking care of our home.
Yeah, because, we had to make our home wheelchair accessible.
Right.
Because he had to use the wheelchair for, a few months. And my main focus, my main priority was him, making sure that he's comfortable, making sure that he can get from point A to point B without, his life being completely disrupted, because it already has been. But it was all about him. I had to take myself and my feelings out of the equation. It was no longer about me. And God placed that in my heart. And he was like, this is what you need to do. You need to step up to the plate. There's going to be a time and a place for you to deal with your emotions, and I'm going to help you deal with those emotions. That's what I'm here for. But right now, it's about your husband. Mm-hmm. And you made a vow to him. You made that covenant, and you have to honor that. Mm-hmm. And so I did, and I still do. Yeah. And it's so crazy because 5-10 years ago, I couldn't say that I would be that kind of woman. Right. I mean,
we're surprised when tragedy comes, what we have the capacity.
Oh, wow.
To do.
Oh, absolutely.
But it's in each and every one of us as his image bearers that we all have capacity to love like he loves, forgive. Yeah,
and most people don't know, because we don't really open up about, our marriage. But when someone had asked me, or said, would she have left? They didn't know that I would have left, but it wasn't because of the accident. It would have been because of him stepping out of our marriage.
Of course.
And so I really had to pull myself together. Mm-hmm. It's not because he said, oh, I'm going to go get the motorcycle anyway. And, right. And he lost a leg. No, that has nothing to do with it.
So what does the future hold for the Perkins then? So what is the best and highest intention that you would like to get out of sharing your story?
I think the highest level of takeaway from all of this is problems are going to, no marriage is bulletproof. No marriage is bulletproof. And what I mean, but it's what caliber of bullet and what level of damage are you going to allow to happen in your marriage? Mm-hmm. You can let it be a little 22 and it grazes you and you're like, hey, look, we had a problem. It's not going to destroy us. Or a shotgun blast and your whole marriage is in pieces.
We're in Texas, the gun shrapnel.
Yeah.
Analogies.
Right? And so it's, the takeaway from this is, we can make mistakes, but what you do going forward, how you handle them
Absolutely.
Going forward has been, I think, the biggest takeaway from this. I love my wife. Have there been times that she doesn't like me? Yes. Have there been times that I don't like her? Yes. Do we love each other? Yes. The worst thing that happened in the accident was when I heard LaVon tell her it's bad. You got to get out of here.
Mm.
I've never, ever wanted to put my wife in a situation where she thought she was going to physically lose me. The best thing that happened in the accident was when I thought it was a good idea to follow my stupid instincts and think, well, I'm not getting this from my wife. I'm going to go over here. That was the worst thing, also. But the best thing was just to be honest with my wife. Mm-hmm. The most freeing and best thing is just to be upfront and be honest and to be truthful.
Like helping the church that way. Shallee, what would you want people to take away, or what would be your resounding advice?
Yeah, for me, it would be, you hear about these stories all the time on the news about people dying and getting into these tragic accidents or tragedy happening to someone that you don't know. And you think that will never happen to me. Well, boy, are you wrong, because tragedy can strike at any point in time to anyone. Mm-hmm. And when it does, you're never prepared for it. And moving forward, I think it's easy to say what you would do until you're in that situation. And then you realize what you would really do. And my takeaway would be to just keep that relationship with God as strong as possible. Absolutely. Don't steer away from it. Like we do our daily devotions in the morning. That's something that we did not do before.
No, we didn't.
And because I'm a flight attendant, I can't always attend church. So the first thing that we do in the morning is we have our cup of coffee. And when we have our coffee, we do our daily devotions and we pray for each other and for whoever else. And so keep God front and center of everything that you do, and realizing that things that were a big deal before are not really that big of a deal. Wow. Pick and choose your battles wisely, because when that person is gone or they're laying on their deathbed, there's so many thoughts that go through your head.
Focus real quick on what's
really
important.
Quick of what really matters. And him stepping out, is it a big deal? Yes. But having my husband here is even more of a big deal, and working on our marriage and the kind of people that we want to be and who we want to become, and helping each other get there. And so marriage isn't easy. Life isn't easy. It doesn't come with a manual. Actually, it does. It comes with the Bible. That is your manual.
There we go.
Read it. Learn the word. Apply it. But be there for that person without any expectations. Do it because that's what God expects you to do. God expected me to be there for my husband. Had I done what I wanted to do, it probably wouldn't have worked out so great for him or me. And so
I appreciate 6 months, an update 6 months after the greatest tragedy that you guys have probably experienced in your life.
Tragedy turned into something so beautiful, though. It really did.
Out of the ashes.
Absolutely. Grateful for the accident in its own way.
Right.
Well, I'm grateful to have the Perkins on, Shalee and Antonio. What a delightful experience today.
Yeah.
I'm sure we're going to follow up again in the next 6 months to a year. If we don't see you on panels and marriage conferences and things, you have something very valuable to say, that forgiveness and love works.
No, it does.
Forgiveness and love works.
There was a lot to unpack.
Yep, there was. So I'd like to thank our listening audience, and I appreciate those that have tuned in and follow up and ask questions. And to the good producer, Walter Johnson Jr., we thank you for listening in on Just Keep Living. You can find my guest today, Antonio Perkins, on Come On In podcast on the Potatron Network. So we thank you for listening in, and follow up with Antonio and his bride, Shalee. Everyone at some point in their lives will have to settle the matter of disappointment, whether in people or circumstances. Choose to receive His grace to influence your next step. Just keep living with Marva Hanks.
Sign up and be a part of the team. Be a Potatron at Potatron.com. Thank you for listening to Potatron.